First of all, I have to apologize because I have done this video twice and I don't know why. This is the third time, and for some reason, I can't find it, and I don't remember if I posted it or not. So I'm going to give you an idea on what to look for if you have a radio with cutting in and out, especially your Connexes and your Galaxies. Galaxies and Connexes are kind of prone to cold solder joints and something else. So, first thing you want to do is make sure you have it hooked up to an antenna when you do this. And you don't want to use anything metal. You want to use your finger at some point. If not, a pencil with the eraser or something like a marker. Alright, you know, because you want to be able to move the board around a little bit. So what happens? It could be a number of things, but here's how you can kind of find some cold solder joints. If you can use your finger across most of the top, but if you put your finger on something and you hear a hum, well then you're going to want to use something else. So kind of like just take your pen and don't be afraid to push. Don't push down so hard you're going to crack the board, but you're going to see the board jiggle. Don't be afraid. Don't push on anything that's going to bend out of the way, anything small. Make sure anything you push on the board itself or things that are secured. You don't want to push on something that's not secured, otherwise you're going to end up breaking it, bending it, and it'll break off on you. But this will kind of give you an indication. So you want to kind of hit everything. Now if you can narrow it down and you start seeing the difference, well then that's good. You narrow it down to wherever it is and you're okay. Now that's on that side. You can do the same thing on the board side, but you don't want to use your finger because you'll end up getting a hum. But again, do the same thing. Push down on it. Alright, just, you know, see what happens. Again, if you don't have that, use this. Now on the board side, you don't want to use anything brass or metal or anything like that. But if you have an old toothbrush or a stiff nylon brush, something like that, you can take it, radio again being on, hooked up to an antenna, because you don't accidentally want to short something out and have it key up on you without an antenna. You can kind of like go back and forth lightly. Alright, as long as it's a nylon brush. You don't want to do this with it, like I say, anything that's going to be conductive. And then you can find out and start narrowing it down that way. Now, Galaxies and Connexes and some of your other exports used to have a problem. What would happen is you'd get in the truck or in the vehicle, and the truck drivers especially, they would really wrench down the sides of the knobs to make it tight, because they want it tight, and so that's what they do. However, that creates a problem. Now it's hard to show you with this board, because this board is laying on the chassis, you know, the frame, and you can see the screws going through it. While your Connexes and your Galaxies and things, the board is a little smaller, so that you're actually seeing the chassis here, if you know what I mean. Let me draw you a quick picture, because I feel that would probably work a lot better than me trying to explain it to you. What's this? Yeah, use this. Okay. On most of your radios, this is an old radio, but most of your radios, what happens is you have your chassis. Alright, again, the antenna is behind us. Doesn't make a difference, but that's where the antenna is now. But what happens on the chassis is they put these little legs that come out with holes in them. Okay? And then the board will rest and screw onto those legs. So the board is actually a little smaller than the chassis. You follow me? Now what happens because of that, now you're pulling on these knobs, you're tightening it down. That's why a lot of times you can't find these on the bench, because when it's on the bench it's going to be okay. But when you put it in the truck and get tighten down your knobs, it acts up. Well, if you're looking at it with the rear, over here on this side, you have one of your output transistors, you have an audio chip, you know, there's things with legs that come over. The legs are coming up out of the bottom from between the chassis and the board, and they're soldered onto the board. And the same with the audio chip. That'll have a number of legs. Okay. What it looks like, the audio chip, well, I'm not going to have an audio chip in here that looks like it because this one's different. But if you can see down in here, that's a transistor down in there. You're really not going to see it that well because this one's a little bit different. But what it is, it's an IC. It's a three-legged IC. It's your, what they call your final output. Some call it a power amplifier, but that's it right there. And it'll be over here. Well, actually over here. When you turn it upside down, it'll be over on this side. So anyway, it's soldered to the board. And the audio chip is the same way, but that has multiples. Well, when you tighten down on the screws, it pulls the board, the chassis out. And when it pulls the chassis out, it breaks the solder joint and the leg on that IC chip. And the same thing can go wrong with the audio chip. So you end up having a problem. And you're not going to notice it until you look at it and you kind of pull the board out a little bit. And if you look, you may see it move where it's broke. The problem being is you just can't resolder it. Because of it doing what it was doing, when you resolder it, more than likely it's not going to work. You can try, resolder it, see if it helps. Don't lock down on these knobs that tight, and see if it helps. And check your audio chip the same way. All right, your audio output, and see what happens. But more than likely, you're going to have to replace it. And if you replace it, make sure the legs are long enough, okay, and then replace it. The number is on it. If you ever have to take any of these parts out of here, pay attention to everything that you're doing, because any little part that may be in there, you lose it without realizing it, and you're going to end up keep blowing up every part you put in there because of that. Some of them will have a little white porcelain, not porcelain, but like a plastic washer that holds it in, because the final is going to have a hole in it, and it's got your three legs. So that goes in there because you can't have the screw shorting out the output, the final. So what it does is it goes through that washer. That washer kind of looks like this. So that little thing there snaps into the hole, if you see what I mean. Okay. Sometimes they'll have a piece of rubber behind the whole thing up against the chassis, and you don't see that sometimes. So again, when you take it apart, have nothing around you so you can see what's going on. Have a flashlight or some good light and make sure you see what you're doing. They're easy to replace as long as you pay attention. And the same with the audio chip. If you get the right one, you don't have to worry about them. So Galaxies and Connexes have a problem. If you tighten it down too tight, it's going to start spreading the chassis, the frame, and it's going to separate those little ICs. You'll have a broken leg someplace. And you'll see it move if you really look. But when it's on the bench, that's not going to happen because there's nothing pulling it apart. You follow me? So that's something you can look at. So cold solder joints, take something with an eraser, walk around with it like this, see what you come up with. Don't use your finger on this side at all because you'll get a hum somewhere. And that's that side. Check the legs by just kind of pulling the chassis a little bit. On this side, you can get away with your finger, but if you find that you get a hum someplace, just use a pencil instead. And only push on things that are firm. Now back here, if I want to push on something back here, you can see in this corner, there's nothing really firm there. So I'll find a piece of the circuit board that I can actually push on. Okay? Because the cold solder board is going to be on the board, but let's do all these here and check them to see what we have going. All right. Now, like I said, or again, a nylon brush, you kind of just rub on it and see what happens. All right. So those are some hints. And check your microphone. Could be the microphone. Inside the microphone there's a connector. There's 4 wires, some 5. But if I remember right, the Galaxies and Connexes are a 4-pin. And the wiring on that's going to be 1 white, 2 shield, 3 red, 4 black. If I remember correctly, if you plug it in, well, check it first of all. But if anything's broke, if there's 1 wire broke, you're okay. You don't have to worry about it because you'll know where it goes. But you don't want any of those wires on the pins to short out to the chassis of the mic plug. You follow? So each pin has to be separate from the other, and neither of them can touch the mic plug itself. So, but usually it's 1 white, 2 shield, 3 red, 4 black. If you plug it in and it keys automatically, that's why you want to make sure you have a dummy loader and antenna on it. If it keys automatically just by plugging it in, reverse your red and black. If you plug it in and the audio shuts down or something, well then you may want to reverse your shield in blue. Shield in white rather. Some radios require a 6-wire mic, even though it's only a 4-pin. Especially if you're using like the static power mics. You may need the 6-wire because you may have to put the blue with the shield. So it'll be 1 white, 2 shield and blue, 3 red, 4 black. All right? Or 1 white, 2 shield, 3 black, 4 red. You follow me? If you have an antenna on it, you're really not going to cause a lot of problems. So that's it. I hope that helps you a little bit. I'm sorry I couldn't do any more. It's really hard to tell. If you want to do a close-up video of it, kind of look at it, that might be it. But take a look at those over there, because that's characteristic for Galaxies and Connexes. All right?